What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Solo Leveling. This is episode 7, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, just a note is that we were technically doing this a little bit later than usual, but that there's also a new episode of solo leveling this week due to I don't know what the reason is for Japan delaying the episode. It's not the only show that's being
Isn't there going
delayed.
to be like a recap episode or something?
Today I had a being released this week with with them just treading through like everything that we've seen for the first 7 episodes.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna get like episode 8 until like the week after.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so this episode picks up pretty much, of course, where the last one left off. As we know, um, what was it? Dong Suk's brother, now kind of has it out for Sung here. He's investigating like what happened to his brother, because he knows that he of course died, or that, well, he knows that he was murdered by somebody, or that something, basically he was involved in some kind of foul play. So he's kind of looking into that. Um,
Yeah.
but like
And
a majority of the episode, like that's one of the more interesting aspects of the episode, but a majority of it is just kind of uh I would say a little bit more slice of life, because we see a lot more just interaction with Sung and his sister, but we also kind of learn a little bit more about how his body works now, as like with apparently like he tries to drink alcohol and it just immediately breaks down the alcohol in his system, so he can't get drunk.
yeah. And he's also testing the waters of how I guess his daily mission increments have increased. Like instead of like going by the limits of 100 push-ups, squats, and so on and so forth, he realizes that he can go past beyond that, and finds out that he can get extra rewards for doing, extra in terms of like going past the requirements. Then he finds out that there's this like a special recipe that he can acquire that can heal what is it called, like the elixir of life. Calls
Something
it.
like that.
Yeah. And he finds out that it can heal any illness, and believes it can be like some kind of a cure for his mother, who's pretty much been in this coma for uh I guess prior to the series starting. So but at the same time, in this episode, Sung notices that ever since he's been leveling up, he's been getting a lot more bolder than normal. The example being that him killing the six corrupt adventurers that he fought against in the last episode.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and also in this episode, um, the trust fund kid, like, what was his name again?
What was it,
Jinho.
Jinho?
Yeah, he basically uh, tries to get Sung's help, or tries to get him involved in some kind of like, what was it, like a raid party or something like that, or like some kind of some sort of
It's
startup
he
company that.
so Yeah, so Jinho apparently wants to convince Sung to help him establish a guild, but in order to do that, he has to take part in at least 20 raid missions, which the last one that they took part of is, of course, his first. So he needs to do at least 19 more with them. But Sung is a little bit hesitant in wanting to do so. Rather like um he rather do things on his own rather than like working with others. Not sure if it has anything thing to do with like what happened in the last episode, or something else entirely, but um he also feels like that he can obtain more by himself rather than what Jinho is offering him, because Jinho mentions that he can pay him like a decent sum if he helps him establish a guild with him. But like I said, Jinwoo Sung is like a little bit hesitant in wanting to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, so he turns him down, but I do expect he'll probably show up again later. Um, but Uh, I think like Sung eventually learns of this. Of like, was it like a dungeon where he has to fight a Cerberus or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned earlier, that about him finding out that there's the elixir of life, he has to go through this, like, what was it, this S rank dungeon, in which he has, well, the first thing he ends up fighting is this Cerberus beast just guarding the gate. Now, in terms of like, I mentioned that Sung has gotten bolder since he leveled up, but it, I mean, he seems to be overestimating the the strength of his own abilities too, because it's pretty evident with how he was struggling against the Cerberus boss fight just on his own, even with that special dagger that he obtained several episodes ago.
Yeah, it really felt like he was being overconfident with trying to take on the boss by himself, and then of course him just getting. I mean, he should have died quite a few times, but of course comes close to dying, trying to fight the Cerberus boss by himself. Um,
Yeah, he had his like left arm like completely bitten off. He gets chewed on by the Cerberus at least several times. Only for Sung to to stab the Cerberus in the eye multiple times, which is I guess it's the only reason why he was able to beat the thing, because of the dagger's ability to to, what was it? It has the bleed and paralyzing effect, which caused the servers to finally go down. And of course, with the servers going down, he obtains what was it? Obtains a recipe note containing ingredients of like how to make the elixir of life.
mhm.
But in order to do that, he needs to go further into the dungeon and fight more bosses. And Sung, of course, wisely decides not to go through with going further into the dungeon, and rather like rather just level up even further and then go back and fight whatever's left in that S-rank dungeon.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, it makes sense. So I guess I guess now he's going to leave and go essentially grind until he's a sufficient level, and then go back to the dungeon, um, and eventually try to get the create the or get the ingredients to create the elixir to help his mother. But then, of course, we also see in this episode that, as we mentioned before, that Dong Suk's brother is now knows that I guess that Sung was one of the party members that is killed, that was involved in in the dungeon raid that his brother was in. So of course now
Yeah,
he pretty much knows that Sung is most likely, it's either him or the
or
Jinho,
Jinho.
yeah, who's responsible. So uh, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. I guess I mean, maybe that this season's going to end with him like trying to go after either one of them, and they're going to have to like confront him or something.
I I mean, personally, I don't see him as being a big threat to Sung, considering that how much further that he'll probably end up leveling up.
I guess it depends because we don't
Until
really
it,
know much about his brother. So I mean, it could be that he's actually like really high level or something, and we just don't know.
yeah. I mean, we'll have to see how far it can go, but in terms of like Jinwoo, of course, levels up faster. Since defeating the Cerberus boss, just barely, of course.
Yeah.
But as we've seen multiple times, like he can potentially multiple up, possibly even higher, depending on how many different dungeons or bosses he ends up fighting here and there. Because as we know, like not all the other like hunters or adventurers can level up the same way that Sung does.
Yeah.
Same thing with like some of the S rank adventurers that we've seen earlier in the show, like Chahain or a couple of the other characters, but they don't seem to have leveled up uh, naturally. It seems like they were automatically like an S rank, um, from the start. But for Sung's case, like he can just level up from his original E rank to possibly, higher than an S rank, which is pretty likely, based on like how he can easily, just grind and rack up all these kills at numerous times. Not to mention with all the different drops that he can get, like that special dagger that he currently possesses.
Yeah, not to mention he also has the system that's giving him all these tasks, basically, sort of in a way like helping him out. Um,
Well, I mean, in terms of helping him out, but that's a bit debatable still.
well,
Like
of
of
course,
what
at a
this
price,
wants
basically.
him to
Yeah,
do. Yeah, I mean, of course, like like it wanted Sung to kill, the six hunters in the last episode, even though Sung was not, you know, he was he didn't want to really kill them at first until he had really no choice in the end.
yeah. I mean, I feel like he probably would have had to do it anyway, considering he was pretty much backed into a corner. There's not.
I mean, but he was more. Even if, he didn't have the option to do it, he probably would have incapacitated those 6, the 6
Possibly, yeah.
adventurers, with his abilities. I mean, he wouldn't need to kill them, but it was just the system that was forcing him to do it in the first place. Otherwise, it would have killed him.
Mhm. Uh, but yeah, I thought it was a pretty good episode. Of course, it felt just more like it was sort of it kind of like building up to this, I guess, an eventual confrontation with Dong Suk's brother, or whatever he's going to end up doing. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah,
It was also an intense episode too.
yeah. I mean, I thought the
In
scene
terms
with
of
the Cerberus was pretty good, but of course, like the whole time I was just thinking that, of course, Sung was he's kind of an idiot for just trying to go at that by himself. But I guess he's like you said, just overconfident about it, thinking he could take on a boss like that by himself, and he kind of just
yeah.
won essentially by getting lucky.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about, like, it applies to real life too. It's like you don't go into like a high level dungeon with with your low level stats at the time,
Yeah,
So it's I mean, Sung did make, the smart choice not to go even further into the dungeon, because who knows, like, who else, or he might have ended up fighting closer to the dungeon. Heck, he would have been like, he tried escaping that Cerberus boss fight using a teleportation stone, but of course he ends up dropping it by accident during that entire fight.
yeah. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this episode, though. I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, it was a good episode. Definitely showcasing like a potential endgame for Sung, and what he wants to accomplish. Uh, Primarily, he wants to save his mother from whatever illness that she has, and of course, he still has his goal of wanting to, obtain a much higher level, potentially a much higher level than the S rank hunters in his world.
Yeah, yeah, guys. But that all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.